Welcome to Winning Strategies Playbook, the podcast where we welcome business leaders, CEOs, and industry experts to discuss the rise to the top, building wealth, and real estate insights. Here's your host, Jeremy Spann.
Chris Jamieson.
Jeremy Spann.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
Thank you so much for coming today.
Glad to be here.
I appreciate you coming in here and gifting us with some of your time to share some wisdom.
Absolutely.
Being an entrepreneur, a self-made man, owner of business, manager of employees. That's all easy, right? That's easy stuff, right?
Everybody can do it.
Oh yeah, everybody. I mean, I don't know why everybody's not.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. So my father-in-law tells me, and I start every one of these off the same way. My father-in-law tells me I have to do a joke in every one of these. And so I was looking for a pool-related joke, and I had it earlier, but I couldn't find it. But I did find another very good substitute. What is the difference between a hippo and a Zippo?
I'm afraid to ask.
One's really heavy, and the other is a little lighter.
Did they get better from here?
Oh no, that's the only one, right? It's the only one. I mean, I think that if anybody's going to get anything out of these podcasts, is my stand-up career potential is dead. Like it's not even remote. I just need to stay creating business, and that's it.
Well, knowing that is the first step, right?
Yeah, right. No kidding. It's almost like being in a 12-step program for what I should not go do that does not involve alcohol. Or maybe.
No comment.
No comment. Well, you're still thinking of Saturday. And which, by the way, thank you again for inviting Laura and I to come celebrate your lovely wife's birthday at B&B Butchers, which I love that place.
I'm glad you guys can make it. It was a good time for sure.
Oh,
She
yeah.
appreciated it.
Oh, yeah. It was a lot of fun. You had a good crowd of people there.
We did. It was all kinds of people.
Oh, yeah. And the best part is there in the deli where they had salads. Did you make that happen, or did you walk through the door and they took one look at you and said, oh, no, we're just going to put you in a different wing of this place because we see what's fixing to happen?
So, yeah, very good relationship with with Alex. He's the food and wine beverage, or the food and wine manager, beverage manager.
Yeah.
Great guy. We met him at Capitol Grill. We followed him to Papa Brothers, and then he's at B&B now. And he knows some of the group. And so when we set it up, I said, hey, just so you know, we've got some people that might not be quiet. And it might be a good idea if there's an option for us to be on our own. Let's do that. And he said, I've got the perfect place for you. So. And
it was. I felt like being in a fishbowl where everybody was walking by out there in Clear Fork and seeing us in there, where naturally that deli portion is usually closed, and they were all walking by like, that looks like a lot of fun going on in there.
And a lot of wine.
There was a lot of wine and a lot of old fashions and a lot of, I don't even know what all I know is my phone had received your text messages, but I did not view them till the next day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I went home. I was sleepy.
Mm-hmm. You got quiet.
Yeah, which is funny because when you were giving them the warning, I was probably one on the list that you were giving them the warning about.
I can neither confirm or deny that was the case.
Well, I tell you what, your friends were absolutely hilarious. So the audience understands this, because I don't want to name people that may or may not want to be named, but both are attorneys. And one is very animated, much like I am.
And one is very not.
One is very dry, like Laura is, right? Not saying my wife's not funny or anything, but just introvert versus extrovert. And the introvert's a family law practitioner, and then the extrovert is a business law practitioner. And watching her facial expressions and responses to him Well, it really made me feel like I was at home because I get a lot of that same thing from my wife.
You could draw the lines between the two relationships, could you?
Oh, yeah.
Just in the 2 hours we were together?
Oh, man, it didn't take 2 hours. We were 20 seconds into that thing, and I was like, you come sit right here. You and I are going to get along just fine.
And then you noticed the musical chairs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was just that was a lot of fun. And really kind of interesting enough. So, Alex, I mean, here's someone that you've built a relationship with, that you followed restaurant to restaurant. That's pretty cool. How many years?
So it would be, we met him on Rangers opening day in 2013. It would have been 2013. Maybe it was 12. So 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
7 or 8 years. And, very much same situation. We came in there after opening day, and we actually went to Grace.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to Capitol for dinner, and they put us in a back room, and we had Alex, and we had a lot of fun.
But he definitely delivers on a level of service.
He does.
Which is, so this podcast called Winning Strategies Podcast, or Winning Strategies Playbook. That's the podcast. And as I was putting this together, you were one of the first people that jumped out in my mind as had to have you as a guest. For a number of reasons. Is one, you understand service and delivering that value to clients. You being a business owner, an entrepreneur, and I was just like, that's what this is about. This is our target audience, are high performers that really, it's almost like a therapeutic session. Is nobody feels like they're alone, because, heavy is the crown and lonely at the top it is, right? And when you get up there and you're just wondering, man, do other people have bumpy roads like I did, or so and so forth? So you and I met through Entrepreneurs Organization, and we're in different forums, but our wives are in the same forum, and building our friendship since then. 2.5 years, I think. 2.5 years now. And so let's tell the audience what it is that you do for a living.
We own our Lawn Connections. It is a full service lawn and landscape company, from basic maintenance on up to large commercial properties, and then from simple, flower installs to high end custom pools and outdoor living. We pretty much take care of everything outdoors.
Man, so you've been in this industry for how long?
21 years.
21 years. Well, I bet you have seen some things come and go and changes and
all the things. All the things.
All the things.
Oh, yeah.
So, only because I know how this is going to go, and I want to make sure that I don't miss this portion of the topic, is being in real estate. Prior to the pandemic, a swimming pool was a coin toss, 50-50. Half people wanted one, half people didn't want to jack with it. Then people were forced to stay home with their children that they absolutely love, but maybe
everybody loves them.
Everybody loves. You always love your kids, but man, some of them probably had some energy, because a house with a swimming pool right now is flying off the market. It can literally be an
doesn't stay on the market.
Yeah, it can literally be an ugly house with everything under the sun wrong, and they're like, "It's got a swimming pool. We're good.
I'll take it."
Yep, we'll take it. And they're trading for significantly more. I mean, we've already been in a limited inventory market with a high demand for so long that these properties are already trading in multiple offers and trading for more than what they probably should. And now they're going for astronomically more than they should, because they've got a swimming pool. And so the ulterior solution to not being able to lock down a house with a swimming pool is to build a swimming pool. And I think you've probably seen some adjustments in that side of the house since the pandemic, right?
We have. It's everybody wants it not yesterday, but like last week or last month. You're right. It used to be when we're talking to a potential client or an existing client about a pool, it was a challenge. Outdoor living has always been something that people just automatically went with. They were excited about it. Pools, though, you get that conversation is, am I getting my money back? Is this a good investment? Is this a good way to spend the money? All those conversations would happen, and now that's not really what's being talked about. It's, hey, if this is going to happen again, we know exactly what we need to be able to handle that, and it needs to be an outdoor living area. It needs to be a pool. I'm tired of looking at my backyard. I'm tired of looking at my front yard. I need it landscaped. I mean, just a completely different attitude.
Yeah, I mean, before people were willing to live with a lot of things with their house because they weren't there enough, right? And then not just COVID people being locked down where they were home for 60 to 90 days, but now many people telecommuting, working from home, just reinforces of either I'm happy where I'm at, but I want to change it by adding, outdoor areas, or selling it and buying something that already has it. And so has that picked up business with you guys?
It has. We've even been approached. We have some relationships with some investors, and they deal in high-end homes, 7 figures, homes that did not have pools, and they could not sell them because they didn't have a pool. And so they started writing into the contract pool allowances that they would pay for, and it would allow the buyer to finance that into the purchase price. And the thing. And when I first heard about it, when I was first approached about it, I'm thinking, are you really going to do this? And they said, we need to do it. We need to have this in, as part of it, because it's the reason how come we're not selling. And they put that in the contract, and a house that had been on the market for 3 months, 4 months, and this market was off the market, had a contract on it within 7 days.
Yeah. So you did a sketch or CAD drawing or whatever you might want to call it for one of the houses we had listed for sale, which I thought was this was a really interesting house. Prior to COVID, the neighboring houses had been trading for like in 2 to 3 days, multiple offers. So we priced it accordingly. But this one house was the only one that didn't have a pool. And I kid you not, even though there's nothing in the MLS sheet or any of the advertising that talked about having a pool, the common feedback was, it doesn't have a pool. I was like, really, Captain Obvious? No kidding? Like, why were you going to look if it didn't have a pool? And now your feedback is it doesn't have a pool. Or even the seller, it's like, did we put something in there that indicates that there's a pool? I said, no. And no other feedback, not price too high, not funky floor plan, not dated. Just no pool. So at that point, that's when I reached out to you and I said, hey, can you come over there, take a look at it? Let's do some sketches and see if, we could add those. And then, to the level of some intelligence, people were like, oh, well, that pool's not there. I'm like, yeah, when I sent it to you, I said, hey, there's no pool, but here's the sketches of the pool that you could build back there.
It did say artistic rendering.
Artistic rendering, right? Like, how do you look at this thing and go, oh, yeah, no, that looks real, right? It looks like, and then to help people visualize, 'cause a lot of times people, I think, have a hard time visualizing, we had it blown up and taped it to the window, looking out into the backyard so they could visually see what it would look like with a pool.
You should have told me I can make that happen from inside the house with the software I have. So I could have created that for you.
Oh, I'm making a note of that now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm making a note of that. Because at this point, I was sitting there like, what? So finally, we got the house sold, and luckily, everything's good. And it turns out the people that wanted to buy it were looking for a house without a pool.
The only one around?
Literally the only one around. Like everybody else, it doesn't have a pool. Wish it had a pool. And the poor sellers, man, they were like, if we hear one more thing about how we don't have a pool, so anyhow, it just, thank you for doing that, because it certainly did help us paint a picture for some of the showings out there. Now, you're in the pool construction business. Is there any interruptions in supply chain that have affected that?
We've had some issues with, irrigation parts, plumbing. A lot of those come out of Mexico, so there's been some slowdowns with the manufacturing there. Most of our skilled trades haven't really been impacted, other than the fact that the workload has increased substantially. There are pool builders that are not taking new clients right now. They're not taking appointments until 2021.
Wow.
We used to be able to run through, say, gunite, which is about the fourth step in the construction phase. It's the concrete shell, if you will. Used to be able to call that in as soon as we got our green tag from the belly steel, which is the steel plumbing inspection. And we could have the gunite shot in a couple days. Now it's taking 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Wow.
So, a project that would normally take 45 to 60 days is now taking 75 to 90 days. And so it's, customers for the most part, they understand. But there's those that just don't. They don't understand how come there's an issue with some of these things. But, everybody's been impacted by COVID. Quarantine is an issue. If you have a crewmate that gets sick, you've got to quarantine the entire crew, and that slows things down.
Really? Oh, I could see how that puts a real big stopgap in everything.
It did, especially when CDC required every person who tested positive to have 3 negative tests before they could come back. And that really made a problem, because if you had one person that was affected, again, the entire crew is quarantined for 14 days, as long as they don't show any symptoms. It can cause a problem.
Yeah. So with the big increase in demand and little supply of labor and supplies to be able to accommodate that, has that caused pools to become more expensive?
I would imagine demand is increasing the prices. We're very intentional about how we price. We know exactly what it costs to build a pool well, to create an experience for our customers that's good, and we don't cut corners. And so we know what that cost is, and we have real good relationships with our vendors, and so we know what their costs are. We're not just going to go add costs on it. We don't believe that's the way you build relationships. So
let's say prior to the pandemic, if I brought you in on the first of the month, let's say good weather, don't have to worry about any interruptions or anything else, and I said, all right, I want to get a pool. From there to the process of design, completion, and everything else prior to COVID, how long of a process would that have been?
Well, let's break it down a little bit. So design, from the initial consultation to the time that we actually have a design, usually 7-10 days, maybe 2 weeks, depending on workflow. If, we do a very good job of talking through identifying the needs of the client, right? And, peeling that onion and understanding exactly what their key issues are, or what they're trying to accomplish. So our designs get really close to what they're looking for right off the bat. If there's some additional redesigns, that might add another week or so to it, right?
Okay.
So customer says, yes, this is what I want. We price it. They accept the contract. From that point, it could be 4 to 6 weeks to come up with all the designs, all the elevation views, the plans, and then we've got to go through permitting. Fort Worth is one way. It has to be signed off by the electrical companies. Dallas doesn't do that. So it really depends in the city that we're working in. But usually within 4 to 6 weeks, we have a permit. And from that point, once we actually put a shovel in the ground, you're looking at, depending on the scope of work, you're looking at anywhere from 45 to 60 days. A lot of our projects, we don't go after just the cookie cutter pool. We create a backyard. It's the pool, it's the outdoor living, it's the landscaping, the lighting, everything that goes with it. So it's a much more in-depth process than just simply building a pool.
Okay. So it'd be safe to say that from day of showing up to do the consult that it could be 11 prior to COVID, 11 to 16 weeks.
Safe to say. Yep.
Yeah. What about now in a post-COVID-19 world?
I'd say 20 weeks plus.
20 weeks plus. So even on what was the high end before, an additional 4 weeks just to be on the safe side of the smaller side. Wow.
Yeah, and you always have weather to contend with, right? But this is just it's a different problem, and people are still adjusting to it.
Yeah, yeah. That's really interesting. You know, I don't think a lot of folks out there, like you said, even some of your consumers are like, nah, I get it, and some I think are just still living in la la land, like things are still normal, things are going back to normal, and yeah, everything's going to be okay. And we try to advise clients, like, if you want a pool, you probably want to buy one. You buy a house with a pool, because if not, it could be well up to a year before you've got a finished pool. But by the time you get moved in, you get everything done. I mean, you might as well bake in a year. And the interesting thing is prior to COVID, a pool was basically, if you built one in, it was kind of a sunk cost, right? And you did it because you wanted it for personal enjoyment, and or you were going to be in that house for a very long time, or hopefully the value of the market in the area that you're in would surpass what you spent on the pool to be a part of the sale, right? Whereas now, when clients call and say, what do you think? I go, I don't have a definitive answer for you. What I can tell you is, if there was ever a time that a pool may add value, here lately, it is. But I don't have enough data to show me what the future looks like yet to know, is this a temporary fix or is this a permanent feature, and what's going to happen? And I think only time will tell on those things.
Yeah, but I mean, there were some silver linings out of the whole situation. I mean, you know, it used to be you drive through the neighborhood and you might see a couple of people outside. During the quarantine, you'd go outside and all your neighbors were outside. They were riding bikes. They were playing in the yard. They were doing the things that we all should be doing and we all forgot about. And I mean, it was really cool to see. We did it. Our house was spotless. We reorganized things probably 2 or 3 times because, it's just what everybody was doing. How much of your
stuff did Amber throw away during this process?
It's not the way. I throw her stuff away. I can't handle clutter. I cannot handle clutter. And so when we're sitting there looking at it, I just thought, we've got to do something about it. And I can tell you, I reorganized the garage 3 times. And we've got two garages. And so I redid that. Actually, you know what? I just did it a 4th time. One of them. So, that was, I think everybody was doing that. And I think everybody was looking at this going, okay, we've been too busy. We've been putting this stuff off, and now let's do it. But, back to your comment about the pool, one of the hardest conversations that we would have, going back again to the investment part of it is, the logical side of it is, okay, if I put in $100,000 into this pool, what am I going to get back out with it when I sell it, right? Mm-hmm. That's a simple way of looking at it. But what's the value that you get from your personal use? How do you quantify that? How do you say that this is how we're getting that back? And I think that this situation made everybody reevaluate that view to say, yeah, it's really valuable. Mm-hmm. Us being able to go out in the pool and not just sit inside, because we have kids and we've been indoors all this time, we want to be able to go out and enjoy this weather. And the thing about when all this happened in March and April and May, the weather was beautiful.
Right.
So it's a real thing. And I think, sometimes we have to remind people is what is your personal benefit that the value that you're going to get out of being able to use this?
But I think you touched on that, was unlocking that in people, because prior people were just too busy, right? I mean, there's so many distractions and so many things to do that people weren't spending enough time at home to where that value made sense to them. But now when they were at home, they were like, man, I would actually utilize that now. And I do think that based on behaviors of folks, not all folks, but a lot of folks who are guided by the fear of the unknown and the ambiguity of what this world looks like, are like, nope, I'm just gonna stay in, and I might as well go ahead, because who knows how long this pandemic thing lasts. Of course, you hear the politicized version of it, where it's like, oh, it'd be really interesting if this thing's over after November 4th, and then people going, hey, we think we're going to be wearing masks for the next 5 years, and who knows, right? No, nobody knows.
Thank you so much for not making us wear masks.
No. Here's the deal. So this has been kind of my funny take on it is, I try not to turn this podcast into politics or religion or anything else, but I am a believer in the man upstairs. I'm a believer in God. And the reason is because you're going to get your ticket punched when he decides it's time to get your ticket punched. Because if not, I should have been dead about 100 times by now, right? So, God's got this sick sense of humor of, I think I'm like cable TV for God, right? Like I'm Comedy Central, right? You're like HGTV, I'm like Comedy Central for him, right? And he's just is what it is. And so one of my Marine Corps buddies says, well, what do you think about all this? And I says, well, Marine Corps did a pretty good job of trying to kill me, and they weren't very successful at it. And then the police department tried to do a pretty good job of killing me. They weren't successful at it. And just those two things aside, me and my own stupidity was pretty good at not getting myself dead when I probably did a number of not thinking through the moment. As Laura says, on my tombstone, it'll say, hold my beer, watch this. And if those three factors couldn't take me out, and it was Corona, people at my funeral were going to be like, it was the COVID that got him? Like, what? And so I'm, the way I've just kind of had a view, and I try to be respectful of people. I want to give them their comfort zone level of what they want. But at the end of the day is, if I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it. And if it's my time to go, then the man upstairs already decided that long before I ever entered this planet. So that's just kind of my view on it. So if somebody's comfortable not wearing a mask, I'm like, great. And if somebody wants to wrap up in a hazmat suit before they come in here, great. I'm not going to judge, right? It's to whatever everybody's comfort level is.
Absolutely.
But it's funny when you talk about, people being at home and we're watching them all outside and everything else. So I would annoy my friends with going, oh, so you're doing that fake parenting. They're like, I'm not being a fake parent. I was like, well, let me ask you something. I see you out there riding a bicycle with little Johnny and throwing the Frisbee with little Sally and having all this fun. How many times did you do that for a pandemic? And they were like, none. I said, well, it's not fake parenting if you continue that after we all go back. Then it's not fake parenting. But don't be the parent that comes and confuses your kids by doing it just because it's pandemic, and then you go back to not doing it, right? I thought, have you seen Garth Brooks' documentary on Netflix? Okay, great. Sorry. Whether you like country music or not, whether you like Garth Brooks or not, man, this guy was a powerhouse in the music industry. It is well worth watching. And one of the things he talks about is everything that's a blessing is also a curse, and everything that's a curse is also a blessing, right? And so what COVID did was remind us of how small we really are, how many things we're really not in control of. And it did force us to go, hey, turns out family's pretty important. And it is important to tell people you love them. It is important to spend that valuable time. Laura and I kind of razzed Maggie a little bit because, here it was, we were empty nesters enjoying that freedom, and boom, she's inserted back into the home space. And which she didn't want that any more than we did. We were enjoying this newfound freedom. She's enjoying being away from us. Hell, she's going to college in Colorado all the way from us in Texas. And but at the end of the day, we enjoyed it because we did do things as a family, but not to the levels we were doing them during COVID. And we said, you know what, let's make sure this doesn't stop. And I think that was, hopefully some people got the lessons out of it. And then, but a lot of times people have very short memories, right?
Yeah, they do. We had a lot of conversations about that, especially as we started planning or talking about what would happen when our 8-year-old went back to school. And we said, we want this to continue. You know, the selfish part of all of that was we enjoyed the quarantine. We enjoyed the time at home. We enjoyed the time with family. Now, we were blessed because our work was essential, and you know, our crews are still running. We had to change a lot of the things that we had to do, the protocol for how the crews went out and what they did, but we still ran. We were still, you know, through all of that, we were still hiring. We're still hiring, and so we were growing through that. But it allowed us to be at home and slow down. My wife and I, just like you and Laura, we work in our business, and it consumes a lot of our time. It consumes a lot of our conversation outside of work, because it's important. It's important, right? But it makes you forget that sometimes forget that we're also parents, and we need to be focused on the being present and the time that we're spending at home with our daughter. And, you know, I think a lot of professionals have this, you know, especially with the younger kids get frustrated because they're not getting attention and they act out. And it's not that she's bad. It's just, we knew what she was doing. She was trying to insert herself in ways to get us to pay attention. And we're at home and all that went away.
Yeah.
She was well behaved. She was sweet. She did, you know, funny. And we did a lot of things, and we're just looking at each other. We go to bed and we talk about it. We're like, this is what we want. This is what we've been missing. You know, and for us, things did slow down in March when the market went away or went down, because people got a little afraid of spending. They were like, okay, there's uncertainty. How are we going to go forward? So, you know, at a time of the year when we're usually really, really busy, we weren't. And so we just were able to reevaluate that. Well, speed up to May, and all of a sudden, everybody's tired of being home, and they push on the gas, and we're as busy as we've ever been. And it doesn't sound like it's going to, or look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. So we started, like you said, we started going back into our old habits, and we were struggling with that. So we made the decision that we were not going to send her back to school. We decided that we were going to withdraw her, and we were going to homeschool her. And we started the school year on a 2-week RV trip so that she could, you know, it took us out of the office. It took us, allowed us to be present, and we went and explored this country. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that we just forget about and take it granted for because we might see it on TV or just not even know it exists. You know, I struggle with all the protests and stuff. This country is so great. There's so much to it that nobody even knows about. People aren't going around and exploring. Let's put the energy into that. And so, you know, we thought it was really important, and she enjoyed every minute of it. We came back, and we're adjusting our schedule to be able to homeschool her, go do things with her, spend time with her, and also do work. And the cool thing about the pandemic and the quarantine was Zoom.
Yeah.
You know, we learned that we don't have to be in the office for all these things. You know, we have 2 locations. We have a location in North Fort Worth and one in North Dallas. And so, you know, obviously we can't always be there, but taking that drive time out of it and still being able to lead our company and lead it well, we're like, okay, well, now we have extra time.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, we did start to forget that. You know, we got into May, June, and July, and we're like, oh, wait a second, we're going back into this norm that we don't want to be. We want to go back to the new norm that was created with COVID.
Yeah.
And so now we're having to make the adjustment back.
Man, you said a couple of things that I want to unpackage here, but one of them was exploring this great country. There's so much that, I mean, so a couple years ago, and I've seen quite a bit. I mean, I've traveled, I've been in 40 different countries. I've traveled a large part of the U.S. But when, you know, and as you know, because when y'all were on the trip, you stopped by and saw us in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, where we have our house up there. But a couple of years ago, we went to Montana. My cousin runs a ranch up there, and we're out driving. And this is in middle of winter, and we're driving. There's no power lines. We're driving on the snow, which for a Texan, that's just weird, right? You're like, well, you can drive on this stuff, Oh, what? So we're driving on the snow, and we're out there. He's taking us out to another ranch that is kind of remote. I mean, there's no roads, there's no anything. It was just pure, untouched, God's country. And I mean, Laura was in the front seat. Michael was driving. I was in the back seat. And Michael finally goes, "You fall asleep or something?" For me to get quiet, right? And I'm not a real emotional person, but man, it struck something inside of me of just going, but what struck me more than anything else, and of course, this was a couple of years ago, as part of the protests and all of this, is I went, it hurts my heart that so many people in this country, this wonderful, great, incredible country, regardless of what political side you're on, opinions, who you like for president, who you don't like for president, or any of this other stuff, 350 million plus Americans that live here that'll never come see this. Mm-hmm. And that hurt my heart because, wow. I mean, just this incredible beauty. And then it made me go even deeper of sitting there thinking, the amount of lives that men and women serve in the United States military to protect something this beautiful, and it's taken for such granted that people, and it's not an expense. I mean, get in your car, it's a couple tanks of gas, drive out there, take a look. I mean, trust me, if you're going to get a hotel, right about now is the cheapest you can get them, right? I mean, the hospitality industry has just been decimated through this. There's really no excuse. And then it's like, well, I don't have the time. Well, you got your cell phone, you got Zoom on in, right? I mean, there's no reason you can't go explore this. And I'm just wondering if people actually will. And then maybe that will allow this country to reconnect, to go, you know what? We might not have the same ideology, but what we do have is something in common is we live in a country that is this gorgeous and this cool and just all these elements, right? I mean, it was just, man, when that hit me, and again, it was before all the chaos that we see now, it was just, man, it struck a chord with me. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. I do want to unpackage something that you and I have in common. Is that we work with our spouses. And how many friends or people you know that when they find out is the first words out of their mouth, how the hell do you do that?
It's a special thing. I don't know that all relationships can handle it. We've seen firsthand some that don't. The struggles of building a business and maintaining a business and leading a business are real. And when you put both spouses in it, you heard me say earlier, there's no separation. And I think that, you either get stronger or it falls apart. And the harder it was, the more difficult the time, the closer we were. It taught us how to communicate better. It taught us how to, be able to process and take ownership of the situations that were going on. I mean, there's so many times that as a business owner, we try to blame the parts of the business, the customer or the employee or, whatever the situation. And we've been very intentional about looking at the situation and saying, okay, what do I own here? What do I own in this situation? What am I willing to own, and what am I willing to learn from? And how can I elevate the people around me to do the same thing? And when we do that, it's amazing how much better it gets. The culture gets better. The people around you get better. And so, when you live it like that, you've got to make a decision. Are you gonna run the business and you're gonna lead the business, or is it gonna run you?
Mm-hmm.
And we said, we're going to lead it. And we did. Made a lot of mistakes. But, we've never been closer. And it's, every year that goes by, we get closer.
Yeah.
For us, the pandemic, I heard me say, we enjoyed being at home. We spent 2 weeks in an RV. Loved it. There wasn't a single time during those 2 weeks that I thought, God, I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait to get home and not be in this. No, it was great. So
a term that popped in my head is, I'll just say the finished product effect. And what I mean by that is other people that want to be business owners, or maybe someone that wants to step up and run the company or what have you, or people that aren't even in the industry and they want to come do it, they see the finished product, right? And they're like, wow, I want to do that. And wow, that looks really cool. But behind that, we don't often show is the amount of mistakes, the amount of pain, the amount of so many things that go behind that, of course everybody wants to go do it when they look at the finished product, but if they even remotely knew what it was, A through Z, that we had to do in order to produce this finished product, right? Tell me about that. Let's talk. Let's break that down, right? I mean, does that make sense? Is that?
Yeah, no. It's real. I mean, we're all. I've got we got to a point where we realized that we couldn't do this ourselves. I think that's how come we got introduced to EO is there's a part of you as a business owner where there's an ego, right? And a lot of us start out, we think we know everything, and until we mature enough and get to a point where we can say, hey, I need help, raise my hand and say, hey, help me, I'm not sure what to do next. It's hard to do, and once you do, everything changes, right? And so, gentleman that's been working with us put it in a way that really sunk in with me, and it was, we're all in the middle of a story, telling an amazing story. How amazing that story is really up to us. And so the journey from the start of when you start your business to the end, which, are you ever done learning? No. But there's a story there. And there's a story that you can tell that's going to have an impact on other people, whether or not you think it or not. It impacts other people. And we grew organically to start. We had some acquisitions. Some acquisitions were good. We had some acquisitions that were really, really bad. The worst of which is how come I was even introduced to EO. And so it's taken us 2 or 3 years to fix that issue. All of the misrepresentations that were a part of that acquisition. And it would have been easy for us to say, gosh, we wish we would not have done this. Mm-hmm. But both Amber and I can, if somebody asks us, was it worth it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because of the relationships that we have now, we started going back to church, so our relationship with God is completely different. It changed us, and the relationships are completely different than they used to be. And I know that had I not gone through those struggles, I wouldn't have been able to accept some of the help or the relationships that I now have, because I would have been too immature. My ego would have been too big to say, oh, I don't need that. When I absolutely did.
Man, so 4 years, 1 month ago, we're living in our big fancy house over there over in Park East. Got our fancy cars out in the driveway. 2 years earlier, I had dropped papers to retire from the police department, but since it was an early retirement, my pension would be much smaller and wouldn't kick in for many more years still yet to come, because I trusted some folks and they made an offer. They didn't deliver. It was complete, wool over the eyes, whole 9 yards. I didn't know anything from anything. Thought I knew, right? Thought I had the answers. I know better than everybody else. And then got there and realized a couple of con artists had not just bamboozled me, but all the other people they had recruited to be a part of this company, as well as investors and everybody else. So here it was, August 2016, sitting in my kitchen at the counter, staring at a $300 electric bill, wondering, how am I going to pay this electric bill? If I can't pay this electric bill, that's the least of my concerns. Like, all right, like my house payment is like $5,000 a month, right? That doesn't include the insurance premium because we happen to be a 3/4 of an inch lower than what was required to not be next to the Trinity flood, whatever that we had to pay the extra premium on each year, or the fact that I was paying like $27,000 a year in property taxes and these 2 car payments and kid in private school and all this. $300, that's, and I'm staring at it, and I'll never forget sitting there and just going, I've lost everything that I worked so many years, that Laura worked so many years to build. And I was just, man, I was living in bullshit is what it was, right? Mm-hmm. Not because of that situation, because I had made myself, I always love to say the biggest liar in the room is the one in the mirror, man. And if you want to have an honest conversation, have an honest conversation with the person in the mirror before you have an honest conversation with anybody else. And I'd managed to lie to myself so many times to make myself believe something, which during the process of everything that just went so bad with that is I never did anything wrong. I never cheated anybody. I never screwed anybody, but I really probably should have asked a lot of questions that I didn't ask. And even as painful as it was sitting in that kitchen, in that moment, staring at it, and when people hear that and they go, man, I bet you wish you could go back and change it all. And I'm like, nope, not a second of it. And I tell them, I go, look, that was hands down the most painful lesson I could ever, the easiest days of my life are when people were trying to kill me for a living. Like I'll talk to my old Marine Corps buddies or PD buddies. Like when people were trying to kill us or hurt us, those were easier days because it was very black and white. It was very easy. One, I knew my level of training, my level of skills, probably better than the bad guy or the enemy. I knew I could do pretty good. But now here it is. I don't know what to do. I have no answers. I'm living in this bowl of ambiguity. I don't know where it's going to come out on the other end, but I did know one thing. I was not going to let my family down. I was not, I might have failed as a husband, failed as a father, failed as a business professional, failed at everything in my life. But the one thing I was not going to fail at was doing everything I could to turn it around. And then here it is, 4 years, 1 month later, doing pretty good. Mm-hmm. Got a house here, got a house in Colorado, paying cash each semester for my kid to go to school. Relationship with my wife couldn't be any better. And so like what you're talking about is those moments when those happen is people go, man, I bet you we should change that. And I'm like, no. I said, don't get me wrong. I learned a lot. As I joke around, I go, I got an MBA from TCU, but I got a PhD in business there, and all that learning. And then later being introduced to EO and really at that point figuring out, I don't think I know anything. Like what I thought I knew is not even like even the humble things that I thought I knew at that point was just, man, just changed and then just became a better husband, became a better father, became a better business partner with my wife. I mean, think about this. So here it was, August 2016, looking at my wife going, I have completely risked everything we have where we can't even pay this electric bill. And her response is, we should be business partners. You should come into real estate and let's do this together. Like, what? Huh? Like, yeah, you're the one always saying that I've got a hearing problem. Did you not hear anything that I just said? I have completely trained. I mean, this is like two trains coming at each other with explosives in the middle. Like there is no survival rate. And she's like, no, I want to be business partners with you. Because at the end of the day, what Laura knew she could trust in me was when I screw up, I own it. Accountability is so important. And here's the thing is, if you want to shut a room full of angry people that are angry at you for something you did down, just look at them and go, nope, that's mine. That is my doo-doo sandwich, and I brought some Tabasco sauce and some Worcestershire sauce. I want to try to make it taste as good as it can, but it's still a doo-doo sandwich, and I made it, and I'll eat it. My bad. What can I do to make this better? But you look at people nowadays that just instantly, it's not my fault. It's not my fault.
Victim mentality.
Victim mentality. It's not my fault.
I didn't do it.
I didn't do it.
Somebody else did it.
Yep. Had a recent client, worked with them for a year on a very, very simple deal and didn't want to listen to any of the advice. Deal fell apart. They lost some money out of the deal. Didn't take any advice whatsoever. And at the end, it was everybody else's fault. And it's funny because even though I'm sitting there showing the documentation of the emails and the text and the LOIs and everything else going, I'm pretty sure it's all written right here, man. And we talked about this at least 1 million times. But, but here's the deal. All right. That's your demons you got to go live with, right?
The stories people tell themselves.
It is. Stories.
All stories.
All stories. So speaking of stories, what in you and when did it hit you that you were like, I'm virtually unemployable, so I've got to work for myself? When did this happen?
So I was, when I was in college, I went to North Texas, and I was there because I felt like I needed to go, but I knew that it wasn't the place for me. So I went. I grew up with an amazing mom who gave me just enough rope to hang myself, and then would help me when I did. And even though she was in education, she didn't really force it on me. It was just, growing up at that time, everybody, the attitude was you have to go to college. You have to go to college. So I went, and wasn't for me. I just wasn't really trying. I think I skipped 2 or 3 weeks straight of all my classes, and I still had a 3.59 on a 4-point scale. And I'm like, okay, is this really worth my time? Is there practical use here? And so I had to sell this. I had to sell that, hey, I'm going to pay you back for what I just wasted the last 2 semesters, but I'm going to go figure out what I want to do with my life. And she's like, okay. And so I did it, and I did a couple different things. I worked I was the commissions expert I started in customer service, and I ended up as the commissions expert for a multi-level marketing company. So I know the ins and outs of that. I'm like, yeah, that's not for me. I then went and I sold cars. And what I realized in that was that I really liked the interaction with people, and I really enjoyed sales. But I had a real issue with working so hard to make peanuts for this organization. I did work for a great dealership. I still have a great relationship with them now. But I was like, this isn't what I want to do. So I sold a Viper to a gentleman who was a very successful businessman. And he actually offered me a job to manage one of his salvage yards. That's what he did in salvage yards. So I went to work for him, and I hated it. I thought, okay, well, I like sales, but I don't like this. So I decided to go back to school, and I had been out of school for 2 years, and I had established a lifestyle. I had real people bills, and you go back to school, and I can't really pay those bills anymore. I had a condo, and I had a car, and I had credit cards and all the things, and I thought, well, I'm in school. If I'm going to do this, I need to do it. What are my options for jobs that I'm able to pay these bills? I don't want to be a server. I don't want to wait tables. So I started mowing lawns, and I did it for about a year on the side. And year 2, I said, yeah, I don't need to be in school. I can make a whole lot more money doing this. And so I stopped going. And, I started my first company in 99. Man, did I make a lot of mistakes, and man, did I not know what I was doing. But I thought I did. Try telling a 20-year-old that they don't know what they're doing. What's that conversation look like, right?
Oh, we're going to come back to that in a minute.
I did. I had a big vision, and the challenge in business is you either have a vision and you can figure out how to make it work, right?
Uh-huh.
You can put the plan together to make it work, or you just have a vision and it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I had the vision, but I didn't have the knowledge of how to lead. So I built that to what I realize now was very small. At the time, I thought I was a big thing. I entered into a business partnership, and things were good, but we did not pay attention to the signals, going into 2008, 2009. And we're not ready for that. So we had to liquidate everything I got out of that business. I had some pretty significant wounds. And I just thought, I'm done with this. And then that lasted I went to culinary school and thought, yeah, this isn't what I want to do. I need to go back to work for myself. And so, and from that point on, like you said, it doesn't matter what happens. I'm never failing. I'm going to make it work. And, we've had our ups and downs, but, I do technically have a boss. It's my wife, and I'm okay with that. But I won't work for anybody else.
Man, so you're absolutely right. And it's kind of funny because when we say things like, we're not going to fail, what we're really saying is we're not going to let anybody down. But in all actuality is because there's something wrong with us, right? It's like we got some sort of form of brain damage along the way of, we want to push things to failure because that's what opens the door to the next thing, right? And failure is actually an indicator to us of something that's not working. But through experience and wisdom and everything else, we've been able to take these experiences and go, whoa, nope, yep, here we go. And so that brings me to something I heard a long time ago. And I'm just going to make a statement, and I want you to respond to it.
Okay.
The difference between entrepreneur spirit and entrepreneur courage.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that have the spirit, but the courage is completely different, because there's a lot of people that have great ideas. They'll never act upon it. They're too afraid. And so they have the ideas, they have the spirit. They're like, yeah, I can do this. And then as soon as it gets tough, oh, I'm out. I failed. I can't do that. But the courage to figure it out, to always figure it out and just know, what, there's a solution somewhere and I'm going to find it. That's the difference between the companies that succeed and the companies that don't. And, you're seeing it now. Tough as this is, the ones that have the courage to figure it out, they're figuring it out. The ones that don't, they're not.
The ones that don't are dying, and the ones that do are thriving. Thriving. I mean, if someone would have told me that 2020 was going to bring the post-pandemic protesting, rioting, election year trifecta of anything that could possibly go wrong would go wrong in an entire year, that we would double our business, but I mean, that's the thing that, this podcast is about bringing on guests who have reached levels of success just because of, there's a certain mentality that goes with it. It was like, I had the three brothers from Goosehead Insurance, that started on one little shop and grew it into a publicly traded company. And as Michael Colby said, was, hey, when COVID happened, it's not that we decided to show up to work. We did what we do by design, which is we're not going to let our clients down. And while everybody else sat on their rear ends and watching Netflix and Hulu, we just continued going to work. And that's where I think the success and the courage of doing things is we see the opportunities, right? I mean, while so many people are sitting around driven by fear and they're scared, and we're sitting there going, "Oh, do you see this? Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" I mean, here it was. I had $7.5 million dollars worth of deals that fell apart, salvaged all except for one. And I looked at Laura and I said, "Hey, I'm going to make a big online order of a couple of $1,000s worth of Spann Group grocery sacks, the nylon grocery sacks with masks and gloves and koozies and Corona beer. And I mean, just because it was, Corona beer, Corona funny. And we got the team together and we delivered 300 bags in one day to past and present clients. It's just kind of everybody was cooped up for a couple of weeks by that point. And now here it was, they were like, the Corona beer was a nice touch, right? And actually I had a friend later that says, "Man, you should have brought a Dos Equis." And I said, "What's that for?" And they were like, "Well, if you get Corona twice." So, I mean, but instead it was just a reminder to folks that like, hey, while some people stopped working, we didn't. We're still here. I mean, some people were like, "Man, why did you spend all the money to go do this?" Man, I was reinvesting in the team. I was reinvesting in what I believe in, right? I mean, people come to us. I just look at them and say, "Look, the team is really who you want. You really don't want me. I'm not a dot the I across the T person. The team is the one that is going to bring the value. They're going to bring the thunder." And it was just that courage. And you couldn't have said it literally more word for word of when I talk about entrepreneur spirit versus entrepreneur courage. I think everybody wants to be an entrepreneur spirit wise, but do you have the ability to grind it out? It's like this. And I heard this put, I don't remember what interview I heard this on, but it was a Navy SEAL talking about how anybody could go do one day of buds, right? I mean, anybody can take a piece of sandpaper and run it across their knuckles once. But can you run it across there time and time and time and time and time and time and time again and keep going? Most people don't. Most people can do it once or twice, and then they're like, "Nah, I don't really want to do that." And man, so one of the other things that you had said that really triggered me was you said you had an amazing mom, right? And then you got a wife and you got one kiddo who's a daughter. You and I share that in common too, right? Is where I am very, very pro woman, right? And I'm not trying to make this sound like a poor little missy anything else. It's just I had a strong mom, right? I mean, look, my dad was a Vietnam vet. I've taken some knuckles across the forehead a couple times, and I was more scared of my mom then, not because my mom was violent or anything. It's just my mom just had that presence, that sense of authority, where when she spoke, all the men in the household sat down and went, "Yes, ma'am." And it's the same thing, having Laura and Maggie in it is just one of the challenges that I think that we without making this a big political thing or another is when people say, "Wow, you work with your wife." I'm like, "Yeah," but they're like, "Well, what's that like?" And a lot of times there's this little undertone of like, "Oh, your business partner is a female?" And I'm like, "Man, let me tell you something real quick. There is no person on this earth that I trust more than her. She has got the interests of this family. She's got my interests, everybody's interests. And I can't imagine not having her as a business partner." And, you and Amber had that same thing, right? And which is, yeah, the blessing and the curse, right? Blessing is we get all these great things. The curse is we don't really get to escape away from work as much as we want to, because it's 24/7 being a business owner and partners, right? I mean, there's pillow talk on it, right? And then at the same time, I would never trade that for a million years, because I've been in partnerships and the only one I've had work out yet was the one with my wife.
Yeah.
You're laughing.
It's true. That's true.
I've always struggled with the comment, or the phrase, work-life balance. And I could never put my finger on it until I read an article that, they were interviewing Jeff Bezos, and he put it just right. He's like, it's not a balance, it's harmony. If I'm good at home, I'm good at work. If I'm good at work, I'm good at home. They go together. And so why does it have to be a balance? Let's focus on it being harmony. I'm like, yes, that's it. Because you cannot turn it off. You can't.
Yeah.
They go together.
Yeah. Man, that is the best one I can't believe I've not heard this before, because I think clients understand more now, but I mean, as you know, we split our time between here and Colorado. And people are like, oh, well, you work for 2 weeks and then you go goof off for 2 weeks up there. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm working as much, if not more, while I'm up there. I can just be focused because I don't have all the push and pull of everything while I'm here. So when I'm back for 2-3 weeks, I get more business established. I go work and focus on it for 2-3 weeks. And then I come back and I earn more business. And then I go work on more business. So it's like I'm working in the business, working on the business, right? And it's that harmony, but the difference is it's not 110 degrees, it's 75 degrees. And instead of staring at steam coming off the road, looking out my office window of my house here, I can stare at the mountains while I'm still working and doing it. And we've had several friends and clients that have come up there and stayed, and we purposely set it up where there was overlap for a couple of days so we could just see them and hang out. And they were like, what was really funny is, I'm glad we got to hang out, but you were up before everybody else. And when we got up, all we saw you doing was working. And I said, yeah, because there's that, it's not going to stop. Especially when you're the owner. And one of our ways to try to disconnect is we like to go on these hiking trips where there's no cell phone signal. And that sounds magical to not, for this thing not to ring. But I do have an Inman GPS that has a text feature on it that all the people that are in our company, not everybody's got the connection to it. Immediate family, Michelle, Lynn, and Jeremy, my general manager of the restaurant, have access that they can send me a message if it's important, right? And so the worst that can happen is I get a message out in the middle of nowhere that says, we got a problem. And then I can hike 15 miles for however long that takes, up or downhill, to get in a vehicle and drive to a connection to go, okay, what do we got? What do we got? But fortunately, I've got such trust in my team. They send a little message, and it's usually like, hey, FYI, you're going to hit a cell phone connection, and you need to be aware of this when that happens. So nobody's drawn us out of the wilderness yet, but it's still that, even though I say we disconnect, and we do a lot more, we still got that one little connection. And I can't tell you how many people have been like, hey, man, is there any chance I can get on that thread? And I'm like, hell no, because when I go out there, I want to be able to enjoy time and be away from everything.
Yeah, that was our trip. Our RV trip, it was, we went to places that didn't have very good cell service, and we were okay with it. I would say that's probably the first trip that we've really been able to unplug, and just say, you know what, you guys have got it. Did that mean that we didn't check?
Yeah.
But for the most part, one of the places we stopped was Moab in Utah. And if you've ever been there, you can disappear for days.
Oh yeah.
And
you might not ever be found.
But there's no cell service. So, we're out, and we'd check in when we got back, but we were okay with it. And it was a lot of fun.
So, and this is the big question I always ask everybody at the end. And I know there could be a million answers, but for the sake of time and everything else, there can only be one answer. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back and talk to 22-year-old self, what's the one thing you would go back and say, do this or don't do this? Or what is that one big takeaway that you've got that you would go, hey, if nothing else, if you don't listen to a thing nobody else says, this. I know there's a lot of them.
Well, at the core of it, I would say grow up. Work on your maturity. Get to a point where, if you in life, you've got dependent, independent, and interdependent people, right? Most people are dependent, and it's a choice to become independent. There's maturity that happens in that, but you have to say, hey, I'm willing to be better. I'm willing to improve, and I'm willing to, we talked about earlier the ownership of it. But if I can, if I could reach that self and say, hey, grow up, and then once you've done that, once you're mature enough, say, get rid of the ego and understand that it's okay to ask for help. Because if I knew even a fraction of what I know now, then, oh man, we have the same conversation with my daughter is the things that we've done to elevate, the people that we've surrounded ourselves that have allowed us to elevate or elevated us. And, the stories and the fact that, in life, everything is a choice. And if you break everything that goes on in life to say, hey, you know what, it's always a choice. How you feel, how you act, how you do, those are all choices that we make. Being able to teach my daughter that at 8, and as she gets older, I'm like, oh man, she's going to rule the world. If I could go back to 20-year-old me and say, hey, all the things that are going on are your choice and you're doing, and if it doesn't work, it's your fault. And have me listen to that, oh man, it would just be great. I hope that made sense. I know I bounced around a little bit, but it's just.
So the reason I'm smiling is we've done 11 interviews so far. Well, we've interviewed 11 people so far on podcast, 11 guests. And when I asked that question, I really expected some of these answers to overlap. Now at number 11, I've had 11 different answers, which just plays into that more candid response to that question. Because some people could go real easy, real cliche. Oh, I would tell myself X, Y, Z. And now, at some point, someone's going to have used the same one as everybody else. I'm looking at Aaron. Aaron, our producer here. It's just going. Man, I'm almost excited. Like, how far can we go? How many people can we interview before the first one overlaps? I mean, it's exciting, but that is just how much wisdom is out there where you've got this many incredibly successful people where it was not a smooth road to get there. And everybody's got a different answer of what they would tell themselves at 22.
And the funny part of that is that as business owners, when we all sit down and we all talk about the path or the story from the start to where we're at, they have so many similarities.
Yeah.
We go through that. We have the same struggles. We have the same things, but yeah, it impacts us. The things that the takeaways are completely different.
Oh yeah.
Completely different.
Lawn Connections, Chris Jamieson. Somebody wants to get in touch with you. I mean, we're going to have this on the website and everything else, but if somebody wants to get in touch with you, they need some good advice on some backyarding. Here,
we've got a great customer care team. We've spent a lot of time, our purpose, right, is our employees. And we spend a lot of time elevating our employees, and we want all of our customers to have a relationship with our employees. And so we want them to call the office, get to know our customer care team.
What's that number?
It's 817-231-0042.
0042 817-231-0042. And that's the preferred method of contact.
And the website, we've got it set up. But yeah, I want, with our customer base, it is important that we track. There's a paper trail for everything. And I'd love to say, hey, call me, but
yeah,
I want to make sure that it goes where it's supposed to.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. The more I am not in this business, the more effective we are. So we've removed me from doing so many things. I mean, it was kind of funny. Do you remember that movie Office Space?
Yeah.
Right? And the cubicle gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And finally, he's like, wait a minute, I want my stapler. He's holding on to his stapler. That's the way sometimes I feel about my own company, right? Is we're putting all the decisions because it's the right thing to do, because they're the smarter, better, stronger people to do these things. But I'm like, eventually, I guess all I'm going to do is a podcast. because everybody else is doing everything, and it's more successful when I'm not in the middle of it.
Well, and I can neither confirm or deny the fact that if somebody calls me, I may forget to do it. So.
There is that.
You're reading a text and you get 5 phone calls. So.
Well, Chris Jamieson, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. And man, I really appreciate your time. I know you are a busy professional. And that's the reason you're at the top of your game. And that's the reason you're out here slaying it. And thanks for letting our listeners have an opportunity to hear yet another great, incredible success story.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely.
It was fun.
It's great seeing you, brother.